welcome to the October writing vlog. It is October 3rd, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure it's October 3rd. And so it's October 3rd, and this month what I'm going to be working on, I have a few things. So I'm going to be working on drafting the Dark Academia. I'm not going to finish by the end of the month, but I'm going to be working on drafting it. I'm going to be drafting it for like 2 months. So that. I also have to do my He-Man edits. So we got a round of edits from Mattel, so I have to do those. So I'm going to be working on that this week. Next week, I'm going to be working on finishing up that sci-fi short story for that anthology that isn't announced yet. I know I've been saying, I feel like I said that in 2 separate vlogs because I keep having to push it and push it and push it for tighter deadlines and more near deadlines, but I'm determined to get to work on it next week. So hopefully that will happen. And then I'm going to start my next short story for another unannounced anthology, which is a fantasy. It's fantasy. So that one is it's fantasy romance actually. So that is going to be the next one, and because it's fantasy and it's a lot more involved and it's high fantasy, I need to do quite a bit more world building and plotting, and so I have set aside an entire week to work on the world building and plotting, and then 2 weeks to actually do the drafting and revising of it, which I think I'll probably end up doing in November sometime, early November maybe, but in October I'm just going to do the world building and the plotting of it. So that is what I have on the docket for October, and during that entire time, again, I will be drafting the Dark Academia. So today I woke up and I got that like feeling where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write a book and I don't know how. I don't know how to do those things. I don't know how to write novels. I'm confused and I'm unaware of how to do this. And I like spent a good chunk of the weekend, and certainly all of the time that I was awake in the morning, dreading it because I was like, I don't know how to do this. And then of course, as happens with every single time, I sat down and I looked at my little outline and I got all my little stuff prepared to help me draft, and then I just sat down and drafted away, and after about an hour I was like, oh, I'm done for the day. So I did like 1900 words, something like that. I have to do roughly 2000 words every day, every weekday for the next like 2 months, minus that turkey holiday, which I've taken off because I know my partner's gonna be off, so I've taken it off. So yeah, minus that. So just gonna be doing that, but I was surprised by how quickly I was able to do it, especially because I'm not really fast drafting anymore per se. I take time to look at my plotter stuff and to make sure I'm hitting all of the stuff that I'm supposed to be hitting for that chapter. Though I'm not done the chapter yet, it's still happening, just because I had to do a prologue chapter and then I got into the next chapter, so I'm not quite done the like first official chapter. So I want to look at that, and then because it's set, somewhere real, which really is all of my books, but so I wanted to look up landmark stuff, and like she had to go from a nightclub to a park, and I wanted to make sure that the like path she would be taking to get there made sense. So then I had to look at my maps app, and I had to do a bunch of stuff, and I had to look at the character profile to make sure I was describing them right and all of that stuff. So yeah, suffice to say, it did work out, and I am feeling good about it. I don't think it's good per se yet because it's a first draft, but I'm feeling fine about it. So there's that. And then I did some of the He-Man edits. So these edits, because they're coming from Mattel, they're basically coming from like the He-Man expert. And so most of the edits are really just like things that I had missed or things that needed to be corrected, stuff like that. So I worked on that as well, and I will be working on that all week. And yeah, that's basically everything that's going on today, and I will check back in with you on Friday.
When you're not here, the shine when you're not near. I don't feel like I do when you're with me. It felt like suddenly our souls collided, hearts entwined. When I decided to make you mine, I'm never going back. I know that's a fact, but how do I know if it's love that I'm speaking of? This is love if I'm making you breakfast. This is love if I feel myself coming down when you're not around. This is love if I think I've gone crazy. This is love if it seems I don't care at all. That your love hit me like a cannonball. I used to worry about my options, yeah, I used to think too much. I think too much, but with you I forget my worries. Behind me they can't touch me now. Yeah, that's
It is Saturday, and yeah, I'm just gonna do the rundown of how stuff went this week. So, I was drafting, so I started drafting, which I was really nervous about, but it actually is going pretty well. I think I just and this always happens, I kind of just sat down and I was like, well, I have my notes and I'll just do it. And so I just sat down and did it. Though on Friday I was like, man, I don't want to do this, but I powered through, and now I have a long weekend awaiting me, so that's great. But so the Dark Academia drafting is going well. I'm ignoring things that are upsetting. Like, I know I'm using repeated expressions and phrases. I know I'm doing a bit of telling. All of that stuff, I'm like, you can fix that in the self-edit. Do not worry about that. So I'm just worrying about getting all the stuff that I have in my plotter onto the page, because I very meticulously planned that, and I just need to make sure everything I planned out that is supposed to be happening is happening on page. So I'm focusing on that, and that's going well. I just had to do a couple little changes. Like, I had to shift some scenes into different chapters just because of the length. I'm trying to get each chapter to be 2,000 words. That's, for my YA stuff, that's kind of the baseline I like to work with, is 2,000 word chapters. And then, what happens after is what happens after. But I try and make that the baseline. And so I'll shift, I had to shift some scenes just to make sure chapters weren't too long. And I changed one little thing, which I had the love interest and the main character, basically he sees the main character do something. Like, he sees her throw a knife, to be vague, and then he comes back, and he has the knife, and he's trying to learn more about her. And so originally they just kind of went together to a second location, and then I was like, but why would she do that? Because she's really not interested. And so I had him withhold the knife from her, and so she's kind of forced to go along with it. So I did that instead. So yeah, that's what that did. But not a huge change, but just little changes on the fly I have to make sometimes. And then I've been working on drafting my sci-fi short story about the potato farm, and that's coming along. I have to make larger adjustments with that because I was drafting on Friday and I was at 3,500 words in what is supposed to be a 5,000 word story, and I realized I hadn't even hit the midpoint yet, and I was like, oh no. So I quickly basically restructured it so that I could hit the midpoint at that time, and so then I had to really change what the midpoint was and things like that. So I know it's gonna be a chore for me to edit that because I gotta fix the whole structure, but anyway, that's a problem for next week. And other than that, I'm having a fun time with it. And then lastly, I finished my He-Man edits. I finished those actually on Wednesday. I thought they were going to be larger edits than they were. So I kind of like split it up into like the whole week. But then the last 2 days, I was like, I can do like 2 days of work in one day. So I did that. I think the heaviest amount of work I had to do was really in the first chapter, because I had to restructure some things. Because the Mattel notes, the guy at Mattel, he's a He-Man expert, and so he's like, this thing really isn't possible. And so then I was like, okay, I gotta like change this whole scene because this thing I had done wasn't actually possible. So that was that. But yeah, otherwise very good. And that was all the work I did. And then in exciting publishing stuff, the promo box for Delicious Monsters arrived. I'm not sure if it's in the B-roll that you just saw or the next B-roll or what's gonna happen, but I do have a video unboxing it that I'm gonna put in here. But yeah, very, very exciting. Having a promotional box for my book was one of those like far-reaching author dreams that I didn't actually expect to ever happen. So it's very exciting. Very grateful to my publisher for that. They put together such a cool box. Like, it's really awesome. And so that'll be sent out to, you know, influencers and media, and I think probably also booksellers and things like that. And those are just kind of going out now because I think I've just been tagged in like one thing of someone getting a box, and me and my agent just got ours. So I'm glad that I got it early so I don't have to look on jealously as other people receive theirs. So those are being sent out right now. And eventually I will probably also do some sort of ARC giveaway. I'll probably do it closer to the 3-month mark of like Delicious Monsters coming out, because I still have, you know, a chunk of ARCs. So I'll probably do that at that point. And yeah, so that was really exciting. And I really enjoyed that. And then the only other thing is today I got to do some mailing. I found a place in Toronto that gives out books for free to kids in low-income neighborhoods, and so I am packing up a box to send of author copies. So that's great because it gets rid of some of my author copies, but you know, in a way that makes me feel good. And I'm happy that, you know, kids that potentially couldn't afford to get copies of the book will be able to get copies of the book. So I'm gonna do that today, and that's about it. And then I will see you again at the end of next week.
Know if it's love that I'm speaking of. This is love if I'm making you breakfast. This is love if I feel myself coming down and you're not around. This is love if I think I've gone crazy. This is love if it seems I don't care at all. That your love hit me like a cannonball.
Okay, so it's the end of the second week of October, and do my little update for you. So first things first, starting with my sci-fi short story that I have kept trying to work on and kept having to push. I have finally finished working on it. So I finished drafting it, and then I also revised it, and essentially I did kind of 2 revisions. So here's what happened. I got to the halfway point and I realized it was too much. So I ended up basically scrapping what I had planned out for the plot and like just creating an entirely new like midpoint section, creating an entirely new kind of conflict, and just going with that instead, because all of those plans I had, it was just gonna make the story way too long. It wasn't gonna work, it wasn't gonna happen. So that's kind of something I've been learning as I've been doing short stories. Like sometimes these plans that I have from the beginning, I need to kind of learn what's gonna be too much to serve in a short amount of time and get better at that. But that's a learning experience. So I ended up revising while I was doing it because I made all these changes. Also, I had started writing it in first person past, and then I decided I wanted to do third person instead. So then I was also rewriting it in third person past. So that was that whole process. In the end, I ended up finishing it, and I decided to forego betas. So I finished it, that switching around. I did a second revision, so I read through the whole thing and revised it. So I ended up with what would have been my second draft, which what I originally did with the first short story I had worked on is I sent that second draft to betas, and then I got it back, and then I revised it again, and then I sent it to the editor. But this time I sent it straight to the editor. And here is why. Partially, those comments I had gotten on my first short story, while they were helpful, they weren't a lot. So it wasn't a lot of comments, it wasn't a lot of edits. And I just realized that for short stories, given the time constraints of all the projects I am working on, that it is probably best for me to just send the second draft directly to the editor and get their feedback. Just because the short story feedback from betas, it's not enough, I think, to really warrant going through that extra step before I get around to the editor, especially because what I'm learning in anthologies is that you have two editors. So you have the editor of the anthology who is, at least in my experience thus far, has always been an author who is also contributing to the anthology. They had the idea for the anthology, they put it together, etc., and the anthology came to be, and so they are an editor. But there's also the editor at the publisher. And so the editor at the publisher is also going to edit it. So you are already getting two editors. And so I just kind of decided, for my purposes, it's just better for my short stories to just send my second draft, like my clean draft, straight to the editor instead of doing the whole beta thing. And that I will reserve working with betas for actual full-length projects, because I find in that case I actually do end up making quite a few significant changes, and it feels very worthwhile and it works out time-wise. And that way I'm also not like feeling bad and exhausting beta readers by sending them so much stuff. And so I feel really good about that. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because I'm always like, oh no, I'm the only person that's seen it, what if it's complete trash? And I had to tell myself, I was like, if it's complete trash, Liselle, you'll fix it and you'll make it better, and it's fine. As long as the final product is good, nobody's gonna care that the first draft they read was, garbage, if it is even garbage, which I don't think it is. I think it's pretty good. I think my only struggle is like maybe pacing. Like I don't know if things happen too fast because I'm trying to put so much into the story, but we will see. And it ended up being, I think it ended up being 7,200 words, and the limit for the anthology is 7,500. So it ended up working out. So that is now done and sent off. I've also gotten a confirmation receipt for it, so everything is good with that one. And now for the Dark Academia. I will also now be sharing the title of the Dark Academia, which I thought of and then kind of sat on whether or not I wanted to share it. Anyway, so it is called A Mastery of Monsters. I do not expect that if the book sold, I'd be able to keep that title, because my third book is called Delicious Monsters, and I just feel like I wouldn't get to have another book with monsters in the title like that, but maybe I would, who knows? We are nowhere near that step of the process. I gotta write this book, then I gotta send it to my agent. She's gotta like it. We gotta both work on it, and then we can go on submission, and then we can see if it's even going to sell, and then I can think about whether or not I'll get to keep a title. But for now, I wanted to give it a title, and so it's called A Mastery of Monsters. I've actually also titled the other two books in the proposed trilogy, but I won't even get into that. But I have done that, and they're all in that sort of like format. So I think it's fun. I also found a way to, while drafting, I ended up just kind of on the fly using the title in the actual book and something the character says. So I thought that was fun. So that's the title of The Dark Academia. I will probably interchangeably refer to it as A Mastery of Monsters and The Dark Academia just because it's the way I am. But drafting with that has been coming along. I've been really trying to align myself in the voice of the character. I'm really trying to get used to that. I think that's a process I always go through whenever I'm writing books, is that it takes me a little bit to fully sink into the voice of the character, because even though I've kind of meticulously planned out, like, this is what the character's journey is going to be, and this is how it's going to be through the book, and this is kind of what they're struggling, and the shard of glass, etc., etc., I find that when you get into the book, it is still kind of a different experience to sink into how that character speaks and how they feel and how they see things and they refer to it. And so I know the way that she's going to see things and I know the way she's going to react to things, but having that voice and tone come across on the page is like a separate thing, and it's a separate skill. And I find that it takes me a while to get into that. I don't think I'm quite into that with this main character yet. I don't know if I said her name. Her name is August. So her character name, that's actually the character name I used in my very first book. So the very first book I wrote, which was like a big Twilight ripoff, but it was called The Pack. It was about werewolves. And I taken some of the character names from there. So A Mastery of Monsters is like the spiritual successor to my first book. The character, there's a sort of similar dynamic, even though it's not the same character. And the same with like the love interest. There's a similar dynamic to what I had in my first book, but it's not actually the same or really anything like it. So that's what I mean by like a spiritual successor. Like it feels like this is me recreating my first book. And so that's really the energy. And so in both books, the main character is August Black. And so that is who she is in this book. And yeah, so I'm really just kind of sinking into that character. What I've been trying to listen to, which really helps me, Demi Lovato has this new song. It's called Eat Me, and that's so the energy of the character. Like that's really her whole thing, is that she spent most of her life trying very hard to be perfect and present a sort of image that people would really like and that they could see as perfection. And then this thing happens and that her mom goes missing, and she realizes that this terrible thing has happened in her life, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter that she was perfect. Her life still went to shit. So then she decides, well, I'm not going to try and be perfect anymore if my life is going to go to shit anyway. And so then she becomes someone different, but someone that is actually quite a bit more genuine to who she is, though significantly more angry, but much more genuine to who she actually is. And people don't like that. People around her respond very negatively to that. And so I really do feel like that energy from that song of like, you know, this is the girl that I was and you liked her so much, and now I'm different, but you just have to kind of yeah, you know, in Demi's words, you have to eat me as I am, you know? So I like try and listen to the song and like get into it, because I'm like, yes, this is the energy. Anyway, I've gone on too long for that, about that. I highly recommend listening to that song. And so, yeah, that's kind of the energy I'm going forward with her, and I'm really trying to remind myself of. I'm sure Demi's song is about whatever. Whatever they want to be talking about. I'm sure she has her own things around the song, but like, you know, I'm pulling an energy from the song. It's an interpretation that works for the character. So yeah, that's basically what I'm focusing on the most. But I'm done drafting for now. Next week I'm going to start working on my short story for another anthology. This is the fantasy romance anthology. So I have a longer story and I have more to do. So next week I'm going to be doing a lot of plotting and world building. And then I'm going to get started on that drafting. And I'm hoping that I can finish it in like last week of October, first week of November, and get that sent off as well, because then all my short stories will be written and sent off, and that will be good. So yeah, that's it for this became very long update, and I will chat with you next week.
It's been 2 weeks since I saw you. I'm sorry things end up this way, but bear in mind, I try to be the best you know that I could be. Yeah, yeah. You know I never meant to hurt you. I hope you know I'll always love you. So alright, oh, alright, go. It's alright.
Hello. So I'm going to update about 3 things. So I'm going to talk about a Mastery of Monsters, then I'm going to talk about this fantasy romance short story I'm working on, and then I'm going to share 4 things. Share some updates about another anthology, and then Delicious Monsters updates. So 4 updates actually. So starting with a Mastery of Monsters, we're at about 28,000 words now. So we are trucking along. It's always so interesting with writing because it truly, if you write a certain number of words each day, you will eventually finish. And somehow I'm always surprised by this. But anyway, it's trucking along. Today I wrote a scene where my main character, August, she is invited to in the book, it has a different name in real life, but in the book I've called it the Queen's Black Student Society, and she goes to one of their mixers, but not because she wants to get involved with the group. She's trying to dig up some dirt on something. And the other character that she's interacting with while she's there is Riley. Riley is the treasurer of the Black Student Society, and she's very persistent, weirdly, about getting August to join, and so she's there because she's the one that originally invited August, who wasn't planning to come, but she ends up coming for reasons, and they have a bit of a clash because I don't want to spoil it, but they have a bit of a clash, which I enjoy. I really am enjoying Riley as a character. Again, I'm still feeling my footing with a lot of these characters, but Riley is one of those characters who I've really been thinking a lot about, and I'm very excited to be getting her in the story there. So that is a Mastery of Monsters, and the fantasy romance short story. So I started working on that this week, and so I did some world building and plotting because it's a high fantasy. I did some world building and plotting at the beginning of the week, and then the last 2 days of the week I've started drafting. Drafting is actually going surprisingly quite well. And it's interesting for me because for this one, because it's a fantasy romance, I wanted to plot it from a romance-minded kind of plotting system. So I used Romancing the Beats by Gwen Hayes. I will link to that craft book in the description. But it's interesting because I've never plotted like this. I usually plot with the main character focus and then kind of how the plot beats of the story are playing into their journey, this is really thinking about the characters' romance with each other and their relationship with each other and thinking about that first and kind of building the plot around those beats. And doing that has been a very different experience for me, as someone who usually adds in romance later, like tries to like finesse it in later. And it's fun. It's been good. I've, discovered that when I really focus super hard on the romance element, I can actually create a lot of great chemistry from the beginning instead of like struggling through several drafts, which is how I usually am with romance. So definitely I've been thinking about a Mastery of Monsters, and when I go and do that first self-edit, I'm definitely going to be looking harder at those romancing the beat sections to make sure I can like do this same sort of really strong romance work that I'm doing in the short story in the novel. So that's been a great part of the short story process, is really I'm getting to flex different muscles than I do in my novel length work, and it's helping me learn things about what I can bring to my novel work. So that's been a unexpected fun part of the short story process. So I'm working on that. I'm gonna draft all next week as well, and then I should be done. And then the week after, I'm gonna do some revision. And then I'm going to let it rest, and then I'll revise it one more time way closer to deadline, because the deadline for this has been pushed to next year. I'm just doing it now because I want to get it done now while I have time. I don't want to leave it for January, especially because I'm releasing Delicious Monsters in February, and I don't want to have a bunch of things packed into my schedule in January. So I'm trying to get it done now. And then we'll talk about Delicious Monsters in a second, but the cover for the other short story anthology that I'm in, All These Sunken Souls, the cover was dropped today, so I will flash it up here for those who may be visually impaired. It's like a blue and red color motif, so like mostly a blue background, and there's a black girl upside down in the top right corner, and these like skeletal hands are reaching for her throat, and she's screaming, and what's coming out of her mouth are these really cool like ghostly figure skull things. And then it says All These Sunken Souls, a black horror anthology edited by Circe Moskowitz on the cover. And so that's what the cover looks like. I think it is fantastic. I think it's so cool. I think it's so spooky. I love it. I cannot wait to get my copy. And yeah, so that's still ongoing. I think the next step for my short story in that anthology is line edits. So yeah, those will come out at some point. And then this anthology is coming out August 15th, 2023. So that will be the third book I have out that year. And I think the last book that will come out from me in 2023. So I have Delicious Monsters coming out February 28th. I have the He-Man book, which has a title now, which is Lost in the Void, which is actually a title I suggested. So one time a title I suggested was used, and that one's coming out in June, I believe June 6th, 2023, and then All These Sunken Souls will be out February 15th, 2023. So links for all of those books will be down below if you want to pre-order, if you want to add to Goodreads, if you want to see the full synopsis. All of that will be in the description for you. So yeah, I'm in 2 other anthologies which haven't been announced, and I think just because of the way the dates have been pushed, this is including the fantasy romance one that I'm working on now, because of the way dates have been pushed, I suspect that these might be out in 2024 rather than 2023, but I don't know. They could still maybe be out late 2023. I'm not really sure on dates, so I'm not solidifying that, but that's kind of where those are sitting right now. And yeah, and now on to the Delicious Monster stuff. This week I had a lot of awesome, pleasant Delicious Monsters news. All of it's secret and I can't say anything about it, but I had a lot of great news this week, which was positive. I'm really looking forward to stuff that's coming up, but something I can tell you that I did is I designed a postcard. So in the book, there's this mansion that they inherit, and the main character Daisy, her mom turns it into an Airbnb, and so I thought it would be fun to have postcards, that maybe she would sell to people to be like, oh, I was here at the mansion, and they say welcome to the mansion, and they are actual postcards, so people could mail them to their friends if they wanted to, and I'm getting them printed by Vistaprint. They should have like a gold emboss on them, which I've never had done by Vistaprint, so we'll see how like it comes out and what the quality looks like and all of that, but I'm really excited for it, and I am going to be using those in a variety of ways. I'm pretty much going to be using them like bookmarks because I don't want to make separate bookmarks. It just kind of seems unnecessary when a postcard can also be used as a bookmark. So I'm going to be going to Y'all Fest in Charleston, South Carolina, for fun, not as a guest, just for fun. So I'm going to be walking around and stuff. So I'll have postcards there to give out to people if they want. And I'll like sign books and stuff if people want while I'm just like strolling around. And then also there's something else I'm going to be going to around that date, but it hasn't quite been announced yet, so I can't say. But I will also probably give out postcards there, and I'll probably do giveaways of Delicious Monsters arcs and like final copies and stuff and use the postcards. So I figured there's many applications for them that I can use them, and so I've gotten those postcards made. And that's pretty much it. Otherwise, just trucking along, doing my work. It's been a very good workload for me because the drafting and the working on the short story stuff has actually not taken up a huge amount of time. Like, I find that it's much more my ideal schedule, which is like, you know, I get up and I work for like an hour and a half, and then I have a very long extended lunch, and then I work for like one more hour and a half, and then I'm like off and I'm chill. And I find that's been what my schedule has been like, and so that's been really good for me. So I feel very relaxed. I feel like I'm getting stuff done, but I'm not overloaded. I'm chill. And then in a couple weeks, I think it'll actually be in the November vlog, I'll be going to an in-person event in Sudbury, so that'll be fun too. So I got some finalizations of details of that. So that's everything I have going on for this week, and I will check back in with you at the end of next week.
Run through your hair, yeah. Thought that everything would be okay. Turns out it's the other way. I'm really tired, but still standing trying to get it. Don't wanna live a life that I'd end up regretting. You know I never meant to hurt you. I hope you know I'll always love you. So
I just got a bunch of books in the mail, so I thought I'd do a quick book haul. The first one up is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I love this copy. It's got like really pretty like details on it. I have read this book before, but the first time I read it, I felt like I was so confused and I didn't really understand what was going on, but there were some aspects of it that I found really like haunting, and I'm trying to read more kind of grounded sci-fi horror because that's really what I want to do for my adult works, my adult horror works. I want kind of grounded sci-fi horror, or you know, like horror with like a bit of a sci-fi twist. And so I'm trying to find books that are kind of sci-fi horror but not set in space, because that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to do stuff set in space. So I'm trying to read more of those books for research. So I got this one because I saw it on sale. So yeah, I picked up this one. I'm gonna read the first one first, and then I'll see if I want to get the rest of the trilogy, but I think I'll probably get the rest of the trilogy. But anyway, starting off with one book. And the next book I got is The Rumor Game by Danielle Clayton and Sona Chirapatra. I heard of this one. This one was released this year, and I just I couldn't find it on the library app, and I couldn't find it I couldn't find it on the library app, and I couldn't find it on Scribd. and I was like, oh, I keep meaning to read this one, and then I also saw this one on sale, so I was like, I'm just gonna get it. So it is here. I also heard that it's got kind of like a mixed media sort of format, like there are text messages and stuff in it, so I'm looking forward to that. I believe it's like a YA contemporary, I believe, like a pretty hard-hitting contemporary, so there's that. I also got The Prince and the Dressmaker. I have also actually read this one already. The Rumor Game I haven't read yet, but this one I read already. I read it on like the library app, and I really, really loved it, and so I wanted to get a physical copy of it, so there it is. Yeah, I've been loving a lot of graphic novels these days, so there's that one. And I got The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I have also already read this one, but I own the rest of Grady Hendrix's like paperbacks, so I figured I would get, this was a Target book. Anyway, I figured I'd get, this is like a secondhand sort of copy, so I figured I'd go ahead and get this to add to my collection because I have the rest, so I may as well have this one. Also interesting that that's not actually a step back. When I looked at the cover, like online, I thought this was like a step back, you know, with the flap, because his other books have that, but this one actually isn't. But anyway, I liked The Final Girl Support Group. I enjoy Grady Hendrix's stuff, so wanted to get a physical copy, and now I have it. And next I have Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, the graphic novel. So I haven't read this before. So I read the Kindred graphic novel on the Scribd app earlier this year, and so I was like, you know what? It was hard to read, and that's why I didn't want to read it as a book, because I knew it would be hard to read, and I was like, maybe I'll read it as a graphic novel and then it'll be more accessible to me. So I read that as a graphic novel, and then I just like happened to see this one on sale, and I was like, you know what, I will also read this one in the graphic novel, right? Why not? So I have it here, and yeah, as I said, into graphic novels these days, and I believe it's the exact same artist that did the work for Kindred, and I do like this art style, so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that one. And this is like an adult, it's set in the future. It's set in the year 2024, so it is kind of like a adult sci-fi sort of thing, so looking forward to that one. And finally, I got Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. So I love The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Of course, I don't have a physical copy of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, because at the time I wasn't collecting physical copies of books, so I just don't, even though I really, really love that one. I will eventually one day get a copy. But anyway, I saw Imaginary Friend was on sale. This one I've been interested in reading, but I was also intimidated about reading it because it's like real thick and real long. But again, was also on sale, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get it. So I went ahead and got this one, and I'm looking forward to it. So, because I know this is like a horror, that's what I got off of it. Yeah, and like it's blurb by Joe Hill, so I believe this is a horror, so I'm looking forward to reading a horror by him. So yeah, that was that book. And I've got one more, and this last one is a pre-order. It is The Restless Dark by Erica Waters. I'm trying not to like let the light not show this well, but The Restless Dark, this is one of my pre-orders that came in. I am in love with this cover. I think it is so gorgeous. I am completely obsessed with this cover. But I'm looking forward to this one because it's like it's supposed to be like, from what I remember, like these girls are doing this like true crime competition or something, blah 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 blah. Yes, they're competing in a contest hosted by a true crime podcast, and they are sisters, and so I'm excited to dive into this one. Another like YA horror spooky book, you know, something of that nature.
Hello! Before I get into the update, I just wanted to take a moment to shout out my dear friend Lindsay Puckett, whose debut novel, The Glass Witch, came out this month. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's wild to see your friends get agents and get book published, and it's very exciting. So this is a spooky middle grade novel. We have a chubby heroine who has to break a curse that she technically is the one that open that curse up and save her friends in her town and her family. And yeah, very excited for this one, and you should all go out and be getting your copies. Lindsay is also an Authortuber. I assume if you're following me, you're probably following her, but just in case you aren't, you should, and you can see her whole journey of having her book come out, as well as a bunch of other fun Authortube content, so I will link her down in the description. But yes, there we are, The Glass Witch, and I'm going to put it back in its place of honor that I have created on my bookshelf alongside my spooky haunted house Lego set and my iridescent skull. Sorry, my eyes are watering. I don't know why that keeps happening. I am wearing contacts today, so I wonder if that's why. Anyhow, writing updates. So starting with the Mastery of Monsters, we are plugging along. We are continuing to draft. I'm almost at 40,000 words, which is technically a little bit bad because I'm 2 chapters away from the midpoint, so that tells me that I've been overwriting a little bit, but what can you do? What can you do? It's fantasy. I try to draft lean, but I always overdo it with fantasy, so what can you do? Anyway, what I have started doing though is, inspired by writing the fantasy romance short story, is I have started trying to really take the time to find ways to insert the love interest into the chapters a lot more. So I was writing a chapter about a training sequence and he originally wasn't in it, and I shoved him right in that chapter. So I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of that when I draft. If there are scenes where I can shove him in there and make him more prominent, because he is supposed to be a very prominent character. I think just because this draft is so plot focused that the character stuff is becoming more background, but it's just kind of in the moment while I'm there. If there's some way that I can actually make him a little bit, shove him to the forefront a little bit more, I'm gonna do that. And I'm already kind of having thoughts about ways that I can change the beginning to make it a little bit more action-packed, because I think some of the chapters that I thought were going to be more action-packed, when I'm drafting them, aren't really that way, and I do want it to feel like that and to feel more faster paced. So, for me, the process of drafting is partially drafting and partially my brain thinking about ways that I'm going to revise this. But anyway, trust the process, continue on. I just got to get it drafted and then I can fix everything later. So that is a Mastery of Monsters. And now the fantasy romance short story. So I revised that. Well, it's done. I will say, for all intents and purposes, to me, it is done, but it is not technically done. So I will explain this. So I finished drafting. When I finished drafting, I was like, this is a little bit bad. This is a little bit bad. Okay. But then I revised it. And in the process of revising, things got so much better, because when I was revising, I took the time to, add in better phrases and better metaphors and similes, and to really try and unfold the setting and build it up a little bit more, and to focus a bit more on the characters and getting these nice romantic one-liners and things like that. It was a lot more focused in the revision, and so I was able to finish with a much better product, also within a word count that I liked, because I wanted to be closer to the 8,000 word mark to give me some room to grow if needed, and it is quite close to that, so very excited about that. Now, why is it not technically done? So, because this short story isn't due until the end of January next year, I set out a time for myself in December to let the short story rest, and then to go back and kind of read over it at that point before I submit it, just to give me a little bit of a space of time so that I can have a bit of distance from it and then go back and then do one final quick read through just to kind of fix up any last minute things, just because I have that time. So why not use it? So that is why it's not done because I'm not sending it to the editor right now. Also, it's not done because I realized I accidentally made the story contemporary fantasy and it's supposed to be high fantasy. So or at least from my knowledge it's supposed to be high fantasy. Anyway, I think it's probably better high fantasy. It's just this was my mistake, because the way that the anthology is, I'm incorporating a sort of real life inspiration, and because I was doing that, my brain automatically grounded it in reality. Also because I only write contemporary fantasy, so I think it's just my nature. So when I do that like revision, I'm also gonna have to do some tweaks to like make sure it's high fantasy. It's very close to high fantasy. It's just one little element that needs to be changed. So it's not like I have to do anything huge. It's just like a couple little elements that I want to switch around. So that's what I have to do for it. But for all intents and purposes, it's done. I'm really pleased with it. I think it came out really well. I was like, I really appreciated doing this anthology because I feel like I really stretched my romance muscles. And you know, I was like, I can do this, which seems ridiculous to say because there's romance in my debut series and I do think I did a good job with it. So it's not like I didn't think I could write romance, but those books are very, you know, the romance isn't the main plot, it's a side plot. I've never written anything where romance is like basically the main plot, and so that was kind of the difference here, and I appreciated doing it. You know, lots of learning to be had from that. So that is the last short story I had to draft for this year, which is great. I've been telling myself, I was like, let's not do this many anthologies at once in the future though. I did get a little anthology happy. It was doable, but I was like, ideally in future would maybe like to do a little bit less all in one year, but that's learnings for me in being an author. So there you go. But they've all been wonderful experiences getting to write the short stories. It's been really fun for me because I feel like I'm getting to stretch these muscles and like try out stories and like different styles that I wouldn't necessarily commit to a whole novel, but that is really fun and like creative and expressive for me to get to do in a short story. So that has been fun. And that's really it for this vlog, for this update, and for this whole vlog for October. Yeah, I mean, it's felt busy because I've had a lot of projects to go in and out of, but I think it was a little bit more restful than the month before. And then next month is gonna be Buck Wild, so look forward to that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!